Alex adjusted their glasses nervously as the faint chime of the bell above the door announced a customer. Not just any customer, her. Riley Quinn strolled into the bookstore with the casual confidence of someone who probably debated ethics over coffee, and actually won. She had this thing she did with her hair, flipping it while talking, that made Alex's knees feel like they were auditioning for a jelly commercial. "Morning, Alex," Riley said with that effortless smile, placing her bag on the counter. "Got anything new in philosophy?" Alex's mouth opened, but their brain stalled like a car in rush hour traffic. Words? Vocabulary? Who needed those when you could stand there like a deer who just discovered headlights? Finally, they managed a strained, yeah? Philosophy. Lots of it. Riley chuckled softly. "I'll browse." As she walked away, Alex groaned internally. Smooth. Very smooth. Why not throw in a weather report while you're at it? They turned to the counter and grabbed a nearby book to feign productivity. The title caught their eye: The Stoics' Guide to Life, Mastering Calm and Attractiveness Without Speaking a Word. The subtitle promised techniques for becoming irresistible while maintaining an air of mystery. Alex snorted. Attractive without saying a word? Sounds like a scam. Then they glanced at Riley flipping through a book in the philosophy section. Her laugh echoed as she found something amusing. Alex flipped the book open. Maybe it wasn't such a scam after all. Later that evening, Alex sat at their cluttered kitchen table, the Stoic Guide spread open before them. A half-empty wine glass sat dangerously close to their laptop, and a cat named Socrates batted at their pen as if sensing their desperation. The first chapter highlighted the art of the gaze. According to the book, prolonged, deliberate eye contact was the cornerstone of silent charisma. Alex decided to practice with Socrates, who promptly looked away. "Okay, great start," Alex muttered, trying again. The cat yawned. The next day, Alex tried putting the principle into practice. A regular customer, Mrs. Hathaway, waddled in for her usual stack of romance novels. "Morning, dear," she chirped, plopping her tote bag on the counter. "Morning," Alex replied, fixing their gaze on her. Mrs. Hathaway paused mid-sentence, narrowing her eyes. "Are you feeling okay, Alex? You're looking at me like you've got secrets." Alex blinked, breaking the spell. "Just trying something new." "Well, stop it. You're creeping me out." By the time Riley returned for her book club meeting a few days later, Alex was convinced they'd mastered the art of the gaze. The bookstore had been rearranged to accommodate the small group, with chairs forming a semicircle around a table piled high with literary discussion material. Riley entered first, her usual bag slung over her shoulder. She was wearing a loose-knit sweater that teased glimpses of collarbone, and Alex had to actively resist the urge to stare, though wasn't staring technically part of the plan? "Thanks for hosting, Alex," Riley said. "Of course," Alex replied, locking eyes with her. Riley quirked an eyebrow. "Something on my face?" No, nope." Alex's cheeks flushed. Riley smiled, shaking her head as she took a seat. During the meeting, Alex strategically positioned themselves behind the counter but still within Riley's line of sight. Whenever she spoke, Alex employed their newly learned technique: focused, intense eye contact. Riley's friend, a lively redhead named Claire, leaned over at one point and whispered something in Riley's ear. Riley laughed and glanced at Alex briefly, her cheeks pink. Success, Alex thought. Then Claire blurted out, "Hey, Alex, are you staring at Riley because you like her, or are you just zoning out?" The group erupted into laughter, and Alex wanted to disappear into a stack of unsold cookbooks. After the meeting ended, Riley lingered. She helped Alex clean up while the others filtered out, the air between them filled with a mix of comfortable silence and something heavier. "So," Riley began, "you've been different lately. Calm even. Did you take up yoga or something?" Alex wiped the counter a little too aggressively. "Just trying to improve myself." "Well," Riley said, leaning on the counter with a smirk, "whatever you're doing, it's working. Except for the staring thing." That could use some fine-tuning. Alex stammered. Oh, yeah, totally. Just, fine-tuning that. Riley laughed, her voice warm. Good night, Alex. Don't stay up too late reading all your secret self-help books. As the door closed behind her, Alex sighed, half in relief, half in longing. They glanced at the Stoic guide sitting on the counter. *1 habit down. 2 to go. The next morning, Alex stood in front of the bookstore mirror, rehearsing the next habit. Responding to chaos with calm. The Stoic guide assured them that maintaining composure during moments of unpredictability would signal unparalleled confidence and control. In theory, it sounded like a shortcut to godlike attractiveness. In practice? Alex wasn't so sure. They didn't have to wait long to test it. The book club's second meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. As members began to trickle in, Riley was the first to arrive, wearing a tailored blazer over a graphic tee that read philosophy. It's not that deep. Alex made a mental note to compliment her shirt, but before they could gather the courage, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. A man in his late 40s, reeking of cheap whiskey, stumbled into the store, clutching a dog-eared copy of 50 Shades of Grey. He pointed at Alex with dramatic flair. This, he slurred, holding up the book like it was Exhibit A in a criminal trial, is why relationships are doomed. Unrealistic expectations. The book club members exchanged wide-eyed glances, unsure whether to laugh or flee. Alex froze for a beat, then remembered the mantra from their guide. Remain calm. You are the rock in the storm. With deliberate movements, Alex stepped out from behind the counter and crossed their arms. Sir, I think you've had enough existential crises for one day. The man blinked, swaying slightly. I don't need a lecture. I need closure. Closure. Alex maintained an unflinching poker face, even as the man dramatically fell to his knees, clutching his chest like a rejected soap opera star. Riley, clearly amused, leaned in and whispered, Is this normal here, or are we witnessing performance art? Tuesday. Alex replied dryly, drawing a soft laugh from her. The man, apparently sensing he wasn't getting the audience he wanted, stood up and attempted to storm out but tripped over a stack of erotic classics on display. He fell face first into the pile, scattering books everywhere. One particularly provocative cover landed at Riley's feet, which she picked up with a smirk. The Art of Subtle Seduction, she read aloud, holding it up for Alex. Should we add this to the reading list? Alex's ears burned. Only if you're teaching the discussion. That earned a delighted laugh from Riley, who tucked the book into the pile and helped gather the scattered titles. The drunken man, now forgotten, muttered something unintelligible before staggering out the door, leaving a trail of chaos behind him. As Alex returned to the counter, Riley sidled up, her expression equal parts amused and impressed. I have to say, she began, that was impressive. Most people would have panicked, but you handled that like a Zen master. Just another day in retail. Alex quipped, though inside, they felt a surge of pride. The meeting eventually resumed, and the group dived into lively discussions about the book of the week. Alex tried their best to participate but found their attention drifting toward Riley, who had an almost magnetic presence. Every time she spoke, the room seemed to shift focus, her wit and intelligence drawing people in like a moth to a flame. When the meeting ended, Riley lingered again, this time leaning against a shelf with casual ease. You know, she said, I was thinking about that guy earlier. As ridiculous as he was, he had a point about unrealistic expectations. I mean, look at dating apps, everyone's obsessed with selling a fantasy version of themselves. Alex nodded, trying to appear thoughtful rather than utterly captivated by her. And here I am, selling books. Maybe I should diversify. Riley's lips curved into a playful smile. Books are safer. Less heartbreak. Unless, of course, you start selling those erotic ones. Alex smirked. I need a better marketing strategy. Maybe you could write the foreword. Her laugh came easily, and for a moment, Alex felt like they were finally on the same wavelength. But just as they were about to muster the courage to say something more, Riley glanced at her watch. I should go, she said, though her tone carried a hint of reluctance. Thanks for another great meeting. And for handling whatever that was earlier. As she walked away, Alex leaned against the counter, feeling equal parts exhilarated and exhausted. The guide had been right, calm was attractive, even in the face of absurdity. 2 habits down. 1 to go. Alex had barely recovered from the chaos of the book club incident when the next challenge presented itself, putting the power of stillness into action. According to the Stoic guide, deliberate, measured movements were the ultimate sign of confidence. Slowing down was supposed to convey control, thoughtfulness, and an air of quiet authority. Alex, however, was starting to suspect that whoever wrote this book had never dealt with actual human beings. They decided to test this principle on Riley during what could loosely be considered a date, a casual coffee outing she had suggested after the last book club. It wasn't an official date, Alex reminded themselves repeatedly, but it felt close enough to send their nerves into overdrive. When Riley arrived at the cafe, her usual blend of casual and sharp, Alex stood to greet her. Remembering the guide's instructions, they deliberately reached for her hand in what they hoped was a slow, composed motion. Unfortunately, Riley misread the gesture and went in for a hug instead, resulting in an awkward half-clasp, half-hug collision that left Alex bumping her shoulder and nearly dropping their coffee. Smooth, Riley teased as she slid into the seat opposite Alex. Just keeping you on your toes, Alex replied, cheeks burning. The conversation flowed easily at first. Riley was talking about her students, spinning hilarious stories about their philosophical misinterpretations. Alex laughed at the right moments, nodding thoughtfully when the occasion called for it. But as the minutes ticked by, Alex became hyper-aware of their own movements. The Stoic guide had been clear: avoid fidgeting, quick gestures, or any sign of nervous energy. Alex took this advice to heart, gripping their coffee cup with both hands and holding it perfectly still, as if it were a sacred artifact. Are you okay? Riley asked, her eyes narrowing slightly in concern. Absolutely, Alex replied, nodding slowly, too slowly. You've been holding that coffee like it's a bomb, Riley added, her tone laced with amusement. Alex cleared their throat and set the cup down with exaggerated care, which only made Riley laugh harder. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were trying to impress me. I thought we were just grabbing coffee, Alex countered, trying to sound casual. Exactly. Which is why you don't need to act like you're auditioning for a meditation retreat. Caught off guard, Alex let out an awkward laugh, which turned into a snort. Riley's eyes widened for a moment before she burst into genuine laughter, leaning back in her chair. Okay, now I'm impressed, she said, still chuckling. Most people wouldn't survive a self-deprecating snort on a not date. Glad to know my social faux pas are working in my favor, Alex muttered, but their chest felt lighter. Riley's laugh was contagious, and for the first time that day, Alex let go of the rigid rules they'd been trying so hard to follow. The conversation shifted to books, a safe and familiar topic. Riley mentioned a niche philosophical novel she'd been reading, and Alex leaned forward slightly, genuinely intrigued. They stopped thinking about their movements, their gaze, or their tone of voice. For a while, it was just two people connecting over something they both loved. When the server came to clear their table, Riley glanced at her phone and frowned slightly. I should probably head out. I've got office hours this afternoon. Alex nodded, trying not to let disappointment show. They stood as Riley gathered her things, determined not to let the moment end on a flat note. Thanks for coming out, Alex said, their voice steady. Of course, Riley replied, her smile warm. This was fun. You're full of surprises, you know that? Good ones, I hope. Mostly, she teased, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. But I'll keep you posted. She stepped closer, and for a heartbeat, Alex thought she might hug them again, or worse, go for a kiss. Panic set in. The guide hadn't mentioned anything about how to handle this scenario. Should they stand still? Move closer? Laugh it off? Riley seemed to sense the hesitation and tilted her head, her expression softening. Relax, Alex, You don't have to try so hard. I like you the way you are. The words hit like a well-aimed dart, piercing through all of Alex's overthinking. They managed a small, genuine smile. Thanks. I'll try to remember that. As Riley walked away, Alex sat back down at the table, their coffee now cold but untouched. They picked up the cup and took a sip, savoring the quiet moment of clarity. The Stoic Guide might have had its merits, but it was clear now that no book could fully prepare them for someone like Riley. Still, they couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. They were figuring it out, one habit, one awkward encounter, one laugh at a time. Alex's confidence was at an all-time high as they prepared for the bookstore's biggest event of the month, the Philosophy Slam. It was Riley's idea, a semi-casual debate night with coffee, pastries, and enough intellectual sparring to keep everyone entertained. It was also, as Riley described it, a chance to turn the bookstore into a hub of profound nonsense. The event was packed, with chairs set up in every spare corner. Riley was, unsurprisingly, the star of the night, effortlessly debating topics like, "Does free will exist?" while keeping the crowd laughing with her witty asides. Alex hovered near the counter, trying not to look too obvious as they watched her. The Stoic Guide had been retired to the bottom of a drawer, but the lessons lingered. Alex no longer tried to force eye contact or overthink every movement. Instead, they focused on staying present, letting their natural rhythm take over. The result was a newfound ease that even Riley seemed to notice. When Riley finished her debate, she joined Alex at the counter, her cheeks flushed from laughter and caffeine. "You've been quiet tonight," she remarked, leaning against the edge. "What's on your mind?" Alex gestured toward the bustling crowd. "Just taking it all in. You really know how to work a room." Riley grinned. "It's not that hard. People like to laugh, and philosophy's a goldmine for absurdity." She nudged Alex lightly. "You should get up there sometime. I bet you'd surprise everyone." "Not sure I'm ready for that kind of spotlight," Alex admitted, though the idea was tempting. Before Riley could respond, one of the event's more enthusiastic participants, a grad student with far too much to prove, stumbled up to the counter. He looked between Alex and Riley, his eyes gleaming with the kind of misguided confidence only a philosophy major could muster. "Riley," he began, his voice dripping with bravado, "how do you reconcile your belief in existential freedom with the deterministic implications of quantum theory?" Alex suppressed a groan, but Riley took it in stride, her expression calm. "I reconcile it," she said smoothly, "by reminding myself that we're all just stardust trying not to embarrass ourselves in public." The student blinked, clearly unsure whether he'd been insulted. Riley smiled sweetly and turned back to Alex, effectively dismissing him. "See what I mean? Absurdity. It's everywhere." Alex laughed, shaking their head. "You're something else, you know that?" "Is that a compliment?" Riley asked, tilting her head in mock curiosity. "Absolutely." Their moment was interrupted when the grad student returned, this time carrying 2 glasses of wine he'd somehow procured. "A toast," he declared, thrusting one glass toward Riley. Riley hesitated, but before she could decline, Alex stepped forward, plucking the glass from the student's hand with a calm but firm motion. "Thanks," Alex said evenly, "but I think we've got it covered." The student stared, clearly thrown off by Alex's sudden assertiveness. Riley bit back a smile, and after a moment of awkward silence, the student retreated. "You handled that well," Riley said, raising an eyebrow. "Retail training," Alex replied with a shrug. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, debates, and the occasional philosophical tangent that spiraled into nonsense. By the time the last guest left, the bookstore was a mess of empty coffee cups and scattered chairs. Riley stayed behind to help clean up, and as they worked side by side, the air between them felt lighter than it had in weeks. "You've changed, you know," Riley said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Alex glanced at her, surprised. "Changed how?" "You're more you," she smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Less trying to impress everyone, more just being. It's nice." Alex felt a warmth spread through their chest at her words. Thanks. I had a good teacher. Riley laughed softly. If you mean me, I'm not sure I taught you anything. You taught me plenty, Alex said, their tone more serious than they intended. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The bookstore was quiet now, the faint hum of the overhead lights the only sound. Riley leaned against the counter, her gaze steady. Alex, she began, her voice soft. You don't have to try so hard with me. I like you just the way you are. Awkward snorts and all. Alex chuckled, shaking their head. Good to know. They stepped closer, the space between them shrinking until it felt like the rest of the world had faded away. For the first time, Alex didn't overthink it. No guide, no rules, just a moment. And when Riley smiled, leaning in just enough to close the gap, Alex realized they didn't need words to know exactly how she felt.